The Gospel according to Matthew, the 2nd chapter. Okay. Anyway, we skip a bit of Matthew because we're going to catch it next week. Next week is, we're celebrating Epiphany Sunday, the day that the wise men come to see Jesus and bring all of that good stuff. So we're skipping that part. And, you know, in 10 words, I can't squeeze that in there, but it's the story of the wise men that we're skipping. So we begin at verse 13. Now after they being the wise men, the Magi, had left, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt and remain there until I tell you. For Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him." Then Joseph got up, took the child and his mother by night and went to Egypt and remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophet, "Out of Egypt I have called my son." This is where we kind of lose something by missing that story. When the wise men came from the east following the star, they stopped in Jerusalem and talked to King Herod and said, "Well, where's this new king?" And Herod said, "What king? There can't be a new king. I don't know, kid. I'm not giving up my power for any new king." And so in the ways of the powerful at the time, he was rather violent and angry and scared about this new king. So when Herod saw that he had been tricked by the wise men, he was infuriated, and he sent and killed all the children in and around Bethlehem who were 2 years old or under, according to the time that he had learned from the wise men. Then was fulfilled what had been spoken through the prophet Jeremiah. A voice was heard in Ramah, wailing and loud lamentation, Rachel weeping for her children. She refused to be consoled because they were no more. Then Herod died. An angel of the Lord suddenly appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother, go to the land of Israel, for those who were seeking the child's life are dead." Then Joseph got up, took the child and his mother, and went to the land of Israel. But when he had heard that Archelaus was ruling over Judea in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. And after being warned in a dream, he went away to the district of Galilee. There he made his home in a town called Nazareth, so that what had been spoken through the prophet might be fulfilled. He will be called a Nazarene, the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
You invite you to be seated. As a pastor, this is when I first look at the text for the Sunday. I have pastor friends that look months ahead, what texts are coming up and all of that stuff. I look at it on Monday. So I'm still way ahead of the game by looking at it on Monday. I don't wait till Tuesday or Wednesday. I look at it on Monday. But this is one of those texts that you go, really? What could I change it to? Nobody will ever know. Nobody knows what's supposed to be coming up, right? Well, if you read the daily devotional, it has the text for that week. So you might notice that I skipped that one. But this is one of those texts that's really incredibly hard. This that we call the slaughter of the innocents, especially the second paragraph there, where Herod sends his soldiers in to kill every child 2 and under in and around Bethlehem. Now, what do we need that for? What do we need to know that? I could have just X'd that paragraph out and it would have flowed just as nicely without that paragraph, and we wouldn't have to deal with Herod killing all the little babies. But I thought that it was important that we need to talk about this story. And we need to talk about unimaginable evil. The wise men come to Jerusalem and they talk to Herod, and Herod is all angry and upset and scared and violent as can be. And so, in a dream, we hear that Joseph and Mary are sent on their way to Egypt. Now look at this picture. We've been talking for weeks about Mary and Joseph. What kind of people were Mary and Joseph? What was their financial, socioeconomic status? Not very high in the world there. That's that coat thing that she's wearing. Does that look like it fits her socioeconomic status? Maybe not. But, artists have their renditions of things. And besides that, what did the wise men bring for them? Gold, frankincense, and myrrh, all 3 of them worth quite a bit. So, it's my thought, a lot of other thoughts too, that that's probably what sustained them for part of their time, part of their journey to Egypt, was all of a sudden they had some wealth, however much it was, to sustain them. But when they got to Egypt, they were refugees. Right? Not unlike refugees that we have today that are forced from their homes due to violence. Fortunately, Joseph had a trade that he could do anywhere. A stonemason or carpenter or whatever he was, whatever scholars you want to argue with, let's just call him a carpenter. A carpenter, especially then, even now, a good carpenter is always can get work. But still, they were refugees. But refugees because of unimaginable evil, unimaginable violence. Pharaoh sends his soldiers to kill little babies because they might grow up and take his place. One of them might be the king, and he can't have that. He can't stand that. He can't even fathom that he or his heirs would not be the rulers of all of the known world, all of their part of the world anyway. But evil, unimaginable violence and those kind of things didn't start with this story of the massacre of the innocents. In Genesis, Cain kills Abel. We hear the story of the wickedness of humankind and the flood and Noah. We hear the evils of Sodom and Gomorrah. We hear of 400 years of being in exile in Egypt, which immediately the people that read this story from Matthew, when Jesus and Mary and Joseph went to Egypt, would have immediately thought of the other Joseph in his going to Egypt and saving the Israelites. But they stayed there for 400 years, and they grew larger and larger and larger, and the Pharaoh of Egypt decided at some point they were getting too big, too many, and he was afraid that they were going to take over all of Egypt. And we hear this in Exodus 1. Then Pharaoh commanded all his people. Well, he tried to diminish their population by just plain hard work. And that didn't work. They just grew stronger and made more babies. And then he told all the midwives to kill the male children. And the midwives didn't do it. And he was frustrated. So then we hear this. The Pharaoh commanded all his people, every boy that is born to Hebrews shall be thrown into the Nile, but you shall let every girl live. Except for Moses. Remember the story of Moses? This was the time of Moses, where his mother put him in the little basket filled, with the tar, and that whole story is for another time, another place. We move up today, we move up to Jesus. And once again, we have unimaginable violence, unimaginable suffering, just beyond our way of thinking about things. It's difficult to understand, is it not? We're told in several places, Jesus tells us in several places in the Bible, whatever you ask for in my name, I will give to you. Whatever you pray for in my Father's name, he will give to you. And yet for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, for myself not that long, but people have been praying for peace, right? And Jesus says, whatever you ask for in my name, I will give it to you. And I want to say, when? Where? I don't see much peace. Not any more peace today than there was in the time of Jesus. It's been a tough year. A tough year for, we heard about all the celebrities that died, but it's been a horrible year for unimaginable violence. Let's take a minute, see if technology works, and let's just be reminded of some of the violence of this year. There's the start of 2017 violence. Some black job goes into a nightclub in Istanbul, Turkey, and kills 39 people. Unimaginable violence. Unimaginable hate. Just... you could put so many words after that, unimaginable. But unfortunately, I don't have answers. But we can learn something scriptures from today's Bible stories. When God comes, God doesn't necessarily make everything right with the snap of his fingers. And even most often, when God comes into a person's life in a Holy Spirit, just incredibly life-changing way, in many ways life gets tougher. Maybe not more violent, but sometimes it just gets tougher. Look at our stories. The pharaohs, the kings, the religious leaders, they will not willingly give up their power and often use their absolute power and their violence to keep it. They'll fight to the death, even the death of God. And yet Jesus says, whatever you pray for in my name, I will give it to you. We still don't have peace after thousands of years of prayer. But what we do find in these stories is the presence of God with us in all of these trials. Whether they're trials of unmitigated violence or trials of personal struggle. Whose phone is that? Adam? Way back there? Okay. That doesn't go into our category of the things that we're talking about today. Personal struggles and things, that's just... Anyway, where was I? I was talking about, but we find the presence of God in all of the things that we struggle with, whether they're unimaginable violence and that we see around the world, or homelessness in our own city, or our own trials and tribulations. Nowhere does God promise to take us out of all of the suffering and all of the pain. But he has promised to be with us. You know, most of you know, that I suffer from this constant headache. It just doesn't go away. And it's been getting worse and worse. We've talked about that. I've talked about that. And you've been with me through that. I pray about it. Susie prays about it. You pray about it. Family and friends pray about it. Even my doctors pray about it. And yet, there's still suffering there. And I know that many, many, many of you suffer from your own physical or emotional problems. And you try hard not to show them because others wouldn't understand, because others can't possibly understand what it is that you personally are going through. But I do know this, that no matter how much pain and suffering there is, no matter unbelievable violence in our world, God is with us. God is suffering with us. God is crying with us. I was struck by this one sentence that I'm going to finish with from our reading from Isaiah. God is talking through Isaiah to the Israelites about lifting them out of their despair. And he says, in all their distress, it was no messenger or angel, but his, God's, presence that saved them. In his love and in his pity, he redeemed them. He lifted them up and carried them all the days of old.